Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode of Transfer Talk, going over the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news ahead of the summer window. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Yeah. For those of you who are like, why aren't we talking about the Liverpool game and the title race and all that kind of stuff? Don't worry, I have you guys covered. I'm doing another show at 4:30, but I wanted to give the Balogun situation its own time because I do feel like it deserves just, a little bit of attention because I do think this is interesting. And I think I said this on one of our streams recently that I thought that Balogun might be the one that we cash in on. And it looks like that might be the case. So we're going to chit chat about that. But if you guys want to talk about the game and the title hopes and all that kind of stuff, just make sure you come back here. Get your ass back here at 4:30. And we're going to talk about it then. Lucas says, can't focus on transfers now, not going to lie. Well, let's try. And Andre says, good morning from, what is the flag? Let me know what the flag is. Because I don't know that flag off the top of my head, but good morning to you as well. Hugo Garcia says, good morning, Jess. Come on, you Gunners, believe. C. Wilder says, is there a fee mentioned yet? No, but we'll talk about that as well. And Tom says, we can't sell one of the best young strikers in Europe. That would be suicide if you consider how much it would cost to replace him. David Ornstein came out with an article this morning talking about Florian Balogun. And even before this came out, I thought that this felt like a situation that wasn't going to go the way I think Arsenal fans anticipated it going. Because Balogun's most recent quotes for me didn't signal, yeah, I want to come back and play for Arsenal. It was like, we have things to talk about. And you don't go from starting and scoring the amount of goals. I think he scored another goal the other day. So he might be on 18 goals now in his debut season in Ligue 1. And so he's getting a lot of attention. He's playing really well. And you don't go from a starting position to third on Arsenal's bench. As much as I know that I think that he loves the club, I just don't think that that's realistic. And so when he said we have things to talk about and things like that, I thought, oh gosh, this feels like he might want to see what his options are, which he should. He should be looking to see what his options are. I think from Balogun's perspective, from an international perspective and a club perspective, he's too good not to be playing. And so whether it, takes him to go to the U.S. men's national team, to be able to start and get regular call-ups and also leave Arsenal to make sure that he's starting for a club team. I think that's well within his right, and he's just too good, so I thought something like this might start to be talked about. And David Ornstein said, big call ahead for Arsenal on Florian Balogun. 21-year-old striker wants to be first choice next season, ideally at AFC, but not looking realistic. So a move appeals amid huge interest. 2 years left on a contract, no plans to renew or go on loan again. And so the idea of him going out on a loan doesn't appeal to him, and he's not going to renew his contract. Now, remember how long it took Arsenal to get Florian Balogun on a new deal. We know how his agent is. We know he plays hardball. We know he's a bit of a dick, so he's going to do everything in his power. I think agents now also like to push their clients into moves because that's what gets them the pay. And so it's a good time for his agent to start pushing because there's a lot of interest. And I do think that Arsenal getting him on that new deal is significant because then we can ask for a bigger fee. He's young, and this feels like a strike while the iron is hot type of scenario. Lille have made Arsenal striker Florian Balogun their priority this summer as they prepare to sell Jonathan David. Monaco and AC Milan also like the striker. So there's plenty of interest in Florian Balogun, and if he stays in Ligue 1 or goes to a different league, I think he'll do just fine. I would love to see him in the Premier League, but I also think if we do sell somebody like him, it'd be nice to see him away from the Premier League, the last thing you need is, we don't really do well with selling players and then they do well somewhere else, because then every time, they score a goal, we have to hear about it because Arsenal fans can't let it go. And so seeing him at a Lille or AC Milan, I think makes a lot of sense for all parties involved. And that's coming from Santi JFM. Like, he's pretty reliable, so this is not BS. But from my perspective, I think I am okay with Balogun leaving the club this summer. I think it's just not realistic to have 3 strikers. You also think that Trossard is now playing more of a central role. Like, Trossard over the last month or 2 has really adopted that false 9 position behind Gabriel Jesus. When Gabriel Jesus is not playing there, Trossard is playing there, and then you still have Nketiah in the fold. And so I don't think it's realistic for Folarin Balogun, who doesn't really offer a different profile or anything really. He offers something, but he doesn't offer any variety. We have 4 players that basically like to do the same things. And so I don't think it's realistic for him to come back and sit on our bench. And if you were to sell him this summer, I think you could get a fee of somewhere around 40 million for somebody like Folarin Balogun. Where I feel like it would be maybe a bit of a shambles is if we don't get 40 million minimum for Folarin Balogun. Like, he's the hot topic, and we've seen this happen before, where there's players that there's a lot of talk around them. They go for big fees. Maybe they're not really as good as the hype, but the selling club feels good because they did what they needed to do. See Mudryk, he probably wasn't worth anywhere near the 90-something million that Chelsea sold him for, but they rode that wave of him scoring those 3 or 4 Champions League goals and, marketed him as the Ukrainian Neymar, and they got Chelsea to bite. Even his name escapes me, but that young striker that went to Sheffield United from Liverpool, they got like 30 million for a player that never really played for them. And so Arsenal have a really nice profile now where we're looked at as a club that produces high quality young players. And so I would expect no less than 40 million for Folarin Balogun. Anything less than that for me feels silly, so I'm okay with him leaving, but I want to know what you guys are thinking, because I know that there's that fear of like, he's too good to sell. What will happen if he becomes one of the best strikers in the world type thing? It's up to the club to know who's got that trajectory and who doesn't. And I don't think anybody that we've sold in the Arteta era has gone on to be anything special, really. Willock is okay, but he's basically the player that we knew he was going to be. Guendouzi is pretty much the guy that we knew he was going to be. Maybe Martinez, but everybody else that we've sold has pretty much been the player that we thought that they were. And so I have a hard time believing that Balogun is just going to become a Ballon d'Or candidate overnight. Is he really talented? Could he be useful in the Arsenal squad? Absolutely. But do I think this is a player that we absolutely cannot live without? I do not put him in the same category as William Saliba. And so I'm okay with him moving on this summer, with all things being considered. Terrence Tibbs says Jess wants to sell Balogun for 40 million when you couldn't sign someone similar for less than 60 million. Well, we don't need a striker. Like, I'm not in the camp of we have to sign a striker. So I'm not thinking about what we would need to do to replace him. We don't need to replace somebody that's not in our squad. You see what I'm saying? We already have 3 strikers. We have Gabriel Jesus, Trossard, and Nketiah. So why would we need to replace somebody that's not even in the squad? Doesn't make sense. Yo-Yo says, I believe the club will flip Folarin and buy Højlund for significantly less. Otherwise, keep him until the winter if Eddie's injury is a concern. I don't know if Eddie's injury is going to be a concern or not, but the only way I think you bring in another striker, which I still am not convinced that you absolutely have to, but if you want to look at, because I also think that whole rumor about Arsenal looking at the big tall striker has already kind of been kiboshed, but we've looked at options, but that's not something that is looked at as a priority for the summer. But let's just play ball for a second and say that we want to bring in a striker in the summer, move on somebody that is kind of similar to everybody else that you already have, and bring in somebody that's different. And Højlund would fit that group. or fit that parameter. But again, I'm still not convinced that that is something that Arsenal are going to be going for in the summer. And as much as people don't like it, Eddie is somebody that Arteta really likes. And so I don't see Arteta moving Eddie on after giving him 100 bags a week. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I just don't see it. Prince Tutu says, yes, we need squad depth, but it's in other areas. Exactly. I don't think we need more squad depth in center forward at the moment. I think we have more pressing issues in midfield and in the defensive areas at the moment, and maybe even on the right. So for me, it's just, I get some people just want a big, tall striker so that they can have it, but I don't think that that's something that Arsenal are looking at. Matt G says, isn't Højlund valued at around 50 million? Yes, but also he's somebody that is gaining a lot of interest. And so I'm not sure if that would actually be the ending price. You know how it starts off at 50 million, and all of a sudden they're asking for 65, 70 and stuff like that. So yeah, he is valued around 50 million. Let's see. Brian says Trossard is not a striker. Does that matter? Are we not beyond the point of, look at the Arsenal team? Does anybody play in the positions that they're actually supposed to be playing in? Zinchenko is not a left back, but he plays left back for us. Trossard is not a striker, but he plays through the center for Arsenal Football Club. We are beyond the, oh, but Trossard's not a center forward, so he doesn't play center forward. He does. He plays in that 9 position for us. He does a really good job at it, and he's our best like for Gabriel Jesus, who is our number 1, who is not really, he's a creative forward. He's not really a striker. So we're beyond that, you guys. Let's open up our minds a little bit more and not just be like, okay, well, he's not a big, tall, just nailed on back to goal striker. So he's not a striker. Does he score goals and create opportunities for us to, score goals through the center of the pitch? Absolutely. So that player plays center forward for Arsenal Football Club because that's what's required for us. Galaxy says, I think Arsenal should go in for Jonathan David. No, I don't. I don't think we should, because he's similar to everybody else that we have. So here's the thing. Now you're saying, you just said that he was a striker. For Arsenal, he is. Trossard plays as a number 9. He plays in that center forward position for Arsenal. So he does play striker for Arsenal, regardless to if you see him as a striker or not. So I'm right. Like, you guys know, like, what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't know why people are nitpicking. Trossard is a striker for us. Jesus is a striker for us, regardless to if they're a traditional number 9 or not. You guys know what I mean. Prince Tutu says Jonathan David is another Nketiah. I kind of agree with that as well. I think Nketiah and Jonathan David have very similar qualities, and we don't need that quality anymore. In our team, we have enough of that. If we need anything, we need something different, and I still am not convinced that that's the most important thing. Yo-Yo says positional play, people's skill set determines the position. Yo-Yo said it better than I can. People get so locked in. They're like, well, he's not a striker, so we need a striker. No, we don't. We don't play with a striker. We are a traditional striker, number 9. We play very similar to the way that City played pre-Holland. Creative forwards that swap positions, create havoc in those front lines. Like, it's just not that deep, Lucas says Reiss, Caicedo, right wing, right back. That's all we need. Tom says we need a clinical striker who will score 20 plus per season. Selling Balogun does not make sense to me as an Arsenal fan. We need 3 strikers to compete on all comps next season. I mean, I don't agree. Like, I think Manchester City, because they beat up on who did they play the other day? Southampton. They have well, it's not even because of that. It's because we conceded 2 goals, but let's look. They might have 2 more goals than us this season, 3 or 4 or 5, something like that. So without a striker that scores 20 plus goals a season, because in order to score 20 plus goals per season, you need to be playing every match. So basically what you're saying is we need a striker that's going to replace Gabriel Jesus. With Gabriel Jesus, Trossard, Saka, Martinelli, and the rest of the team, we've been able to keep up with Manchester City that have Haaland, who's scoring 40 goals a season. So we don't need that. What we need is, I think we just need another forward that can score goals when Saka is not available. That's really what we need. This idea that we have to have this striker that scores 20 plus goals a season. We had that in Aubameyang, and that wasn't more fruitful than what we have now. We have a system that requires everybody to pitch in, and so we don't need, who need a goal scorer that can score, a striker that can score 20 plus goals a season? Chelsea, because they're trying to funnel everything through Havertz, and he can't score any goals really. Manchester United probably as well. They don't have a system that has 4 or 5 different people that can score 9, 10, 11, 12 goals throughout their team. They probably need a striker that scores 20 plus goals a season. Spurs also need that. Arsenal don't need that. We're showing this season that we're on track. We have almost the same amount of goals as Manchester City, and they have Haaland. We don't need that. Let's see. Yo-Yo says, we didn't fail to win yesterday due to our forwards or our back line. Fabricio says, I really think Caicedo should be the priority this summer. He's the closest thing to Conte in the league, and he's only 21. His ceiling is so high. Dynamic says, Balogun, unfortunately, isn't Champions League quality. I agree. Cash in and get Vlahovic or Tony. Well, beyond that last point about we have to getting Vlahovic or Tony, Balogun for me doesn't either, he doesn't guarantee 20 plus goals a season either, not in the Premier League. Again, somebody that's getting 20 plus goals a season is going to start every single game for you in the league. That's what you're going to do. And I don't think you give Gabriel Jesus that big contract and the number 9 shirt and then sit him on the bench for Balogun or any other number 9, to be quite frank. So I think we're looking at a situation where we have too many players that play similarly and want to start. And Nketiah has already accepted that backup role. Trossard has shown himself to be a really good like-for-like replacement for Gabriel Jesus to play the way that we need to play so that Martinelli, still gets his service and stuff like that. And so Balogun is kind of that odd man out. And because the iron is hot and there's so much hype around him at the moment, we could probably get 40 million for a player that we've spent no money on because he came from our academy. And I think that that's really good business for Arsenal because we need to be selling our players for good money now. It's not really an excuse because our players they're valuable and they're good assets. Alistair says our problem is our inability to defend as a team. We do defend as a team. We still have one of the best defenses in the league, despite the fact that everybody thinks we can't defend anymore. I don't know. I don't think we have a main issue. I think we could just improve upon what we have right now. Mamang says, Jess, at what price will you be okay to sell? 40 million plus for sure. Lucas says, depends on a budget. We should try to sign another winger and a midfielder to be priority. I think making sure that we have the best midfield in the league is the most important thing. And I think we just about have that, but we could make an improvement to get there. I think improving upon Xhaka was always the thing. And so doing that is important this summer. Not Xhaka needs to go. Xhaka just maybe shouldn't be starting all of our games. And then a winger, because there's also been some talk about Reiss Nelson, which I think ties in nicely with this conversation as well. Even though I'm happy for Reiss Nelson to get a new deal, I'm not convinced that I want him to be the only other option. And what I mean by that is you have Trossard, you have Gabriel Jesus, you have Martinelli, and you have Saka. Those are our elite, forward options, and they do really well. But if all you have behind them is Eddie Nketiah and Reiss Nelson, I don't think that's good enough to go into Champions League because, there are going to be days where some of our players have played, a really difficult game in the Premier League over the weekend, and then they turn around on a Tuesday or Wednesday and play a really difficult game in the Champions League. And we're going to need to rotate maybe against some of the lower level teams in the Premier League, to get them some rest. And I don't know, I even trust Reiss Nelson or Nketiah, maybe more Reiss Nelson, to be a reliable option all the time for us in those scenarios. I know he did well for the goal against Bournemouth and also against Nottingham Forest, but I think in between there, he's had some cameos where I was like, I still kind of feel like we need to buy somebody, and I'm still kind of there with that. So if we could bring in another attacker of elite quality, and I always kind of look at City as the template a little bit because they are kind of the template, and they have Foden, Mahrez, Grealish, Alvarez, and Haaland, and that's 5. And so right now we have 4. So I'd like us to get one more if we can. And that's why I'm not really that concerned about it being a striker, because we already have so many players that can play central. I think we need somebody else off of the right, to be honest. Alistair says selling Balogun does not mean that we don't rate him. He's just surplus to requirements right now. And I think it's just too easy to say, well, Balogun has the higher ceiling than Nketiah, so you get rid of Balogun, or you get rid of Nketiah to make sure you make room for Balogun, because people are not as high on Nketiah. But Nketiah has accepted the backup role. Balogun is in a place in his career where he's not willing to accept a backup role. And so you have to take that into consideration. I don't think Balogun wants to be the third choice at Arsenal at all. And so that makes the conversation around selling Nketiah to make space for Balogun null and void anyway. So it's just, I think it's just okay for us to move this player on where he's being heavily hyped, and make some coin. Dynamic says, yeah, we need our squad to get Champions League quality. Tom says, great points made, Jess. Thanks for the great show. Thank you so much. This is supposed to be just like a little short one, but we'll keep going. Because you guys seem interested in this, which is great. Dennis the Great says, Balogun comes to Madrid. We need a backup striker, por favor, please. If you're willing to spend 70 million on him, then I'm willing to sell him to you. But yeah, you guys do need a backup striker at Madrid. So maybe you guys will go for him, but I don't think so. Lucas says, don't get this Nelson love story. He is Fulham level. So let's talk about that. Arsenal want to keep Reiss Nelson and are hopeful of an extension, but his pathway at Brighton is clear, and a move to Brighton is an attractive proposition for Reiss. Here's the thing. Reiss Nelson is never going to be a starter at Arsenal, and he's 24 years old. And so I think he needs to either shit or get off the pot. Like, he's either going to have to accept always being a squad player at Arsenal, or, maybe giving it one last shot of trying to be the player that he always was considered to be when he left the academy. And so Brighton can give him that option. At the moment, they have Sully March and Matoma, fabulous players, especially Matoma. Matoma will leave Brighton at some point, and maybe this summer, maybe next summer. And so Reiss Nelson can probably see a clearer path to starting games, and Brighton do really well system-wise. I can see it. I really, really can. I think players that want to step up, do well at Arsenal, and I can see players that maybe we're not 100% sold on, or maybe need some more work, would do really well at Brighton, because we do similar things system-wise, and they like technical players as well. So I can see this really working out for Reiss if he really wants to go to Brighton. I would, again, like I said, I'm happy for Reiss Nelson to get an extension, but I still think that no matter what happens with Reiss Nelson, there needs to be another attacker that comes in. And if maybe he knows that no matter what, even if he does sign an extension, Arsenal are still going to bring in a right winger, somebody that has Champions League, maybe experience. That's what I think we need. I think we need another experienced attacker that has Champions League experience. But maybe if we do that Reiss Nelson does not have a clear path, because there's 2 players in his path, on the left, there'll be 2 players on the right kind of blocking his way. And so maybe going to Brighton would be a better option for him. I think that would be a good move for him. I would not be mad if he went to Brighton, but I also would not be mad if he got an extension, as long as we still brought somebody in. Do you know what I mean? Alistair says Reiss should have moved on should move on for the good of his career. I mean, this could be it for him. Like, this could be it for him in terms of giving it one last shot of trying to be like a starter in the Premier League and doing his thing, you know? And I don't think he should give up that opportunity just to sit on our bench, but he may make a wake up mind, says maybe instead of more passes and touches, use the rest of the energy to be more direct. Why are we questioning the way that we play? I see a lot of like, oh, well, maybe we should be doing this, maybe we should be doing that. Nobody was saying that when we won 7 games on the bounce. Like, we drew a game against a good team that plays really well at home, and I don't see why we need to like change everything. This happens every time that we lose a game or we drop points, is like all of a sudden the players aren't good enough. We're missing all these things and this and that. I think we really lose perspective on like how far the team has come in such a short period of time. We're still not anywhere near where we're going to be at the final stage of whatever this group is going to look like. And so I don't think we need to like change the things that we do, change the way that we play because we drew a game against Liverpool. Like, I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to say, but it feels like we're like, okay, this didn't work, so we need to do this. We didn't get the 3 points at Anfield, but like nobody does. Does that mean we have to change everything? No. And again, you guys, there's going to be a full show on literally just the game in about 2.5 hours. So let's not burn all this before then. Okay. Trevelli says we won 7 straight before this match though. Well, that's kind of what my overall point is that we won 7 in a row, and then we drew a game at Anfield, and all of a sudden people are really concerned about the way that we play. We're not direct enough. We didn't do this enough. We need to change all these things. I've seen Odegaard needs to be dropped for big games. Saka shouldn't have started that game. Trossard should have started. All these things, and I'm just like, every time that we drop points, people forget how good we've done. Criticize the mistakes that happen on the day, but like we don't need to like go this far all the time. Like sometimes it's just like, oh, all right. Matchy says spot on. It's so easy for some of our fans to lose perspective. We are top of the league for a reason. Let's chill out. Neil says it's because we have expert sofa managers who haven't played the game before. And like that's the thing. It's like I feel like it's okay for us to say, like, yesterday I even was saying it. I was like, I felt like maybe the substitution should have happened a little bit sooner. But also I take into account that there were a lot of games that we could have lost, that Arteta made the right decisions, substitutions wise, and we won the game. So I have this like weird feeling about like forgetting all the good and focusing on the bad because we're scared that we're not gonna win the league. Because that's all this is. It's the anxiety around feeling like we put ourselves in this great position and people thought we had won it already and we hadn't. So we just need to relax a little bit. And Martin, I think this is spot on. Let's give Liverpool the respect they deserve. I think too many Arsenal fans went into that game thinking that Liverpool were crap. They're crap away from home. They're shit away from home, but at home, they're still pretty much the same Liverpool. They have great attackers. Their midfield is not quite the same, and Van Dijk is going through some things, but they're still a formidable team. And we saw that yesterday. When they turned it on, they looked like the Liverpool of old. So let's stop acting like our team just was shit and remember who we played. This was a team that was last season going for the quad, so I'm not really understanding. But back to okay. And also like, yes, Man City do things and we should take pages from their book, but also Man City are like 10 years into their progression, and this group of players that they have, a lot of them have been like within this group for like 5 years now. And so we're kind of like in the second to third year with a lot of these guys. And so like those layers will come. Just because we don't have those, what do they call it? Those strings in our bow or whatever, just because we don't have that yet doesn't mean we won't get them. I think people have really rushed forward and thought like, okay, well, we're in the title race, so we should be just like Man City, and forgot Man City are what they are because of how long they've been doing it. And we have it. We're not there, like we're just not there yet, but that doesn't mean we can't still win the league. But like, let's be real for like 5 seconds. Alistair says, face it, people, we are a good team. Let's see. Mr. Bravo says, City lost at Anfield. What do you mean? Are you talking to me? Because I'm saying that I don't think that we should be like devastated about getting a draw at Anfield. The Fab says Liverpool will lose the next game. Okay, you guys are still talking about that. But yeah, so back to kind of what we were talking about. Balogun, if we sell him, I'm not upset by that. I think it's okay. I think we'll live. I think we'll survive. I don't think we're selling, the person that's going to be the best striker in the world. I don't see it that way. It would be disappointing just because I wish we had more room in the squad, but there's already Nketiah, and Trossard does a good job down the middle. So if Balogun goes, my only concern would be how much we sell him for, because it can't be 25 million. It needs to be 40 million or something like that, and hopefully Edu can get that type of price. There's a lot of people interested in him. And quite frankly, we're not going to get we're not going to get big fees for Nuno or Pepe or Mari or Cedric or any of these guys. So it'd be nice to recoup something from a player that's being heavily sought after by a lot of different teams. So yeah, and this is not me like kicking Balogun out. I'd love Balogun to stay, but I also don't think Balogun wants to. It's not that I think saying that he wants to go doesn't mean he doesn't want to be at Arsenal, but he wants to be at Arsenal on terms that feel good for him and the trajectory of his career. And sitting behind Eddie Nketiah is not a good career move for Balogun at the moment. So I think some Arsenal fans also need to remember that players have to play for their career, and we can't just keep them, against their will or whatever, because we're so afraid that he's going to become Gnabry, Yo-Yo says, I think Andy Cole and Harry Kane are the most painful ones that got away before actualizing their potential. Yeah, maybe. But see, I view this like a little bit different, just because Balogun's situation for me is more of like okay, we're afraid we're going to sell him before he reaches potential, because he feels like his career could, I think selling to Chelsea with Cole, let me see. No, you're saying Andy Cole. Okay. As I was reading it again, and I was like, Andy Cole. Yeah, I get what you're saying now. Yes, I get what you're saying. I was like, Ashley Cole's different because we sold him to Chelsea, but Andy Cole, Harry Kane, before they realized their potential, they were kind of like in our academy, and then they left, and then they became something great. Absolutely. I get what you're saying there. That's kind of, yeah, the Balogun situation is more similar to that. When I thought you were saying Ashley Cole, I was like, it's different. But yeah, but they went on to be world-class, and that doesn't happen all the time. And I'm not sure that I think that Balogun is going to become that. Let's see. Travarelli says, why do you want to sell the kid, Jess? What's the logic? I don't want to sell him, but I'm okay with selling him based on all the factors. The main thing being that he doesn't want to be third choice at Arsenal because he wants to continue to start. So in order to retain Balogun, you're going to have to promise him that he's going to be a starter at Arsenal Football Club, and he's not better than Gabriel Jesus, and he's not better than Trossard. And so because of those reasons, like if you're willing, if Travarelli or anybody that's in the comment section, if you're like, I would 100% give him the starting position if that were what was required to keep him, let me know, because I wouldn't be okay with that. I wouldn't. So if that's what's required, because this is what it's saying for David Ornstein. He said the 21-year-old striker wants to be first choice next season, ideally at AFC. So for me, it's not realistic. No matter what we really want, or how good we think he is. Mamang, perfect point here. We could insert a buyback clause. I think that's what we need to do, is make sure that, like, kind of like, I think Chelsea have one with Tammy Abraham. He was a player quite similarly to Balogun, in my opinion, that needed to go elsewhere to kind of like, spread his wings and show what a quality player he is. Insert a buyback clause. Maybe he never comes back, maybe he does, but insert a buyback and a sell on, and you're good to go. That's what big clubs, good clubs do. You can't keep everybody. And I think Balogun is one of those that are just, we just don't have space for, and also doesn't want to, be in a position where he's not going to be starting because he's having the time of his life, um, for real. Eric Ta says that is not possible to put in a buyback clause. Why not? Newman says, what's the point of a buyback clause if he doesn't want to play for us? Well, the point of a buyback clause would be if, let's say, Real Madrid in 2 years came in for Gabriel Jesus, and we were in a position where we wanted to bring in a striker, and Balogun is still doing the things that he wants to do, or Balogun is still doing the things that he's doing now, and he's gotten even better, then you'd have the opportunity to buy him for pretty cheap, cheaper than probably his market value, and bring him back in. Because again, what this is saying is it's not that he does not want to play for Arsenal. He does want to play for Arsenal, but he wants to be first choice. So, I think inserting a buyback clause is important for us, because if he does become that player that people think he's going to become, and a Jesus or somebody like that moves on, then we have the space for him. So I think we should put that in. Michael says that's so unfortunate. A loan to a Prem club would have been a perfect move for him, but if that's not what he wants, then so be it. Exactly. Eric, said it's not meant for him to be starting at AFC. Exactly. Wake Up Mind says the players have to accept it, right? What do you mean? The players have to accept it. I don't know, but I also don't think, you guys, I don't think we should, I think Arsenal are kind of the mindset that they're not going to force people to be here that don't want to be here, under the parameters that suit the club, and so I don't imagine that Arsenal are going to keep him against, just keep him to be keeping him. I get that he just has accepted if we don't sell him, but that's not really the type of environment that you want to have. You want to have players that are happy to be there. And to a certain extent, yes, players have to accept the roles that they're given. But when somebody is literally saying, I want to be a number one, like I want to be a starting striker, and you put him behind Eddie just because we're afraid to lose somebody and we're insecure and stuff like that, I think that it sends the wrong message. It really does. And we have to be confident enough that, if we move players on, that we're going to have first of all, we've figured out that they're not a unicorn. I'm hoping that our scouting and the coaches have looked at Balogun long enough to know whether or not he's a Holland or not. And I'm sure that they have. And we also have to be confident enough that when we sell a player on, that what we replace him with or what we bring into the squad is going to improve us so much that we don't miss that player that much. And that's also kind of like my same feeling on Tierney, is that I think he's going to go. That's my gut feeling, is that he will go in the summer. And he may just end up at Newcastle. Newcastle are going to be flying. I mean, if you put Tierney into the team that they have already, it's scary days. It really is. But Arsenal need to be confident enough in what they're doing to feel like, okay, even if we give them Tierney, we're not going to go backwards. And that's my only thing, is if you sell a player that is useful to us, but they want to go and you don't want to keep them, in an unhappy position. Not saying Tierney is unhappy, but if he is and you want to move him on, get a good fee, and whatever we bring in and how we, move the squad forward still has to feel like we've moved forward and not move backward without that player. But I'm not saying I want to sell Tierney. I just do think he will go 100%. Crispy says, everybody is a football manager. Just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you're right. I trust Arteta. Chasman Jeffers says, sell and buy a top striker. Hey, Panduro says, I'd give him one more season on loan in the Premier League. If he does well, then let's extend the contract and integrate him into the team. I trust the club to make the right decision. I'll read this to you again. 21-year-old striker wants to be the first choice next season, ideally at AFC, but not looking realistic. So a move appeals amid huge interest. 2 years left on his contract, no plans to renew or go on loan. So like your entire scenario although it does benefit Arsenal and would probably be the best thing is to be able to let him go on loan, and so we can see him a little bit longer and just kind of extend things. And, he don't want to do none of that. He doesn't want, he don't want to be loaned out. He doesn't want to be on our bench, none of that. So unfortunately that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Um, so yeah, Georgie says swap Balogun for Daka and Sumare. So are you unhappy with Daka and his progression so far this season? I mean, he had a lot of hype around him and I haven't heard much about him. I don't really see him doing much. And Sumare is a player that I thought was really good and also didn't really do well with his transition into the Premier League. So I don't really want those players, but I mean, maybe somebody else will take him. The Sheikh AFC says our squad is young and inexperienced. I don't expect us to win the league this season. However, I'm angry that Arteta deliberately sacrificed all comps for the Premier League just so he looks good. What? So, however, you're angry that Arteta deliberately sacrificed all other comps. I mean, he prioritized the Premier League, yes, for sure. But deliberately sacrificed all other comps for me means that he put out teams in those competitions that he knew would not be able to win those games. And I'm still not convinced that the teams that played against Sporting, the team that played against Manchester City, first of all, those are not easy games by any means. Even Brighton at home was not an easy game with the rotated squad. So I don't think he put out teams that he deliberately knew wouldn't win because he was trying to tank them so that we weren't in any competition but the Premier League, so he looks good. Maybe he could have managed the team a little bit better so we could have went a little bit further, made the teams a little bit stronger. And, but then what kind of repercussions would have that had on the Premier League? I don't know. To be honest, you guys, like, we are where we are right now. I think had we had went harder in every other competition, I do think we'd be more in a situation that Manchester United are in than the situation that we're in, whereby like they're still in every single competition. They won one, but they're in a top 4 race. And, would you trade places with Manchester United right now? I mean, if you feel like we're going to finish second, maybe, but there's no guarantee that they finish in the top 4. And I think if we had spread the team a little bit thinner and tried to do better in other competitions and kind of, we're like, okay, we're going to keep our hands in every single pot. I do think that we'd be maybe a little bit further behind in the top, in the top 4, maybe in a top 4 scrap, type of situation. Maybe we'd feel good because we're in a Europa League quarterfinal, but there's no guarantee you're going to win that. No guarantee you're going to win the FA Cup. And so I think we're just kind of like in that position in our progression where we're not quite ready to fight on all 4 fronts. We could have done better, but I also wouldn't have wanted to sacrifice where we are in the league and be right now. I couldn't be in a top 4 scrap. I just couldn't. And it's a slippery slope. All it would have taken was for us to lose 2 more games in the league. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think I kind of get what you're saying here. I do. But I'm not sure that I believe that that's what Arteta did. Like he tanked those games so that he could look good. Doesn't make sense because going out of competitions never looks good on a manager. Do you know what I mean? So Fabrizio says, Jess, do you think we need 2 midfielders in the summer? Yes, I do. Philip says we don't have the squad size to compete on all fronts yet. I think 2 things can be true. I think the management, especially the Europa League, I think we could have done better there for sure. I think against Manchester City, I think we put out a strong enough side to do better. But once Thomas Partey went off the pitch, which is prior, do we have Jorginho yet? I'm not sure. But I think once Thomas Partey went off, that was it. And then we just couldn't withstand their pressure and so yeah, maybe the Carabao Cup is the one that I'm looking at the most like, damn, what could have been, because that was such a weak competition at the end of the day. But um, I'll see what happens next season. Next season, I'm looking forward to seeing how we manage Champions League. By the way, mathematically, we need 5 more points to get into the Champions League. So if we beat Southampton and beat West Ham, we're in the Champions League again, which is a good thing. But if we were, what we're going to be like going in the Champions League as well as the Premier League, because our best players are going to have to play in both of those competitions, and how we backfill the squad to make sure that we don't have the same gaping holes that we know that are there. Midfield wise, we're not really there quite yet. I think midfield is really where the demolition job needs to happen, you know? Um, so yeah. But yeah, I love you guys. Diallo, yes, I have discussed Flo Balogun already. I know some of you guys are coming late to the stream, but I'm going to be back at 4:30 to talk more about the game and the title race and stuff like that, if you guys want to talk about that. But in terms of Balogun, like David Ornstein has said that he wants to be the first choice next season, ideally at AFC, but that's not looking likely. So a move looks more likely, and he has no plans of signing a new deal or going on loan again. He has, eyes on him from Lille. Like Lille basically have him as their priority because they feel like Jonathan David is going to leave. And then Monaco and AC Milan are also interested. So it looks like Balogun could go. I'm not saying 100%, but what I will say is that, like, from my perspective, if he did go, I wouldn't die. I wouldn't, so yeah. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here and prepare for the next show, because I feel like that one's going to be fiery. We're going to be talking about, did Xhaka actually rile up the Anfield crowd? Is it his fault that we lost, that we drew the game? We're going to talk about Ramsdale. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff, and the title race, and all of the fallout after the game yesterday. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join me back here at 4:30. Oh, and did you guys see that? No internet issues. No glitchy stream. No glitchy stream. No glitchy stream. No glitchy stream. So I'll see you guys at 4:30. Bye, guys.